Good morning. It's Thursday morning, and today we read Matthew 8:14 through 17. When Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she rose and began to serve him. That evening they brought to him many who were oppressed by demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. So, we learned several things here. First of all, Peter was married. At least he had a mother-in-law. We don't know anything else about his wife or his family life or anything else, but most men in those days did get married, and so he was married. She was sick with a fever. Jesus heals her by just touches her. She's healed. Not only the fever, which is the body's response to some infection, but the underlying infection is healed. She gets up and begins to serve him. I suppose partly from gratitude, partly from this is what women did. I don't think there's anything really sexist going on there. It's just that that's the way things were, and that's what she did. He's the guest, and so it's proper for him to be served by the people who live there. That evening they bring many who are oppressed by demons, which I suppose we would say mental illness. And if you've worked with people with mental illness, you know how difficult it is to get them anything like on the way to health. You know, they make some progress and come back. It's back and forth and up and down, and it takes a long time, a lot of effort. And Jesus just says the word, and they're healed, casts out their demon, casts out the affliction that's bothering them, heals the sick, and does all this. Matthew is good at finding places in the Old Testament that Jesus' actions fulfill. And so he turns to Isaiah 52, 53, that passage that we read on Good Friday where it says he healed our afflictions and our illnesses. And that's what Jesus does here. I suppose that if we look at this a certain way, we think, well, if we just come to him in faith, we'll be healed. And most of us know that that's not the case. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. There's no telling why. There's a place in the Old Testament where King David is praying and fasting for days for this child to live, and God has said the child is not going to live, and so the child dies, and the servants are then terrified of what King David is going to say and do, and he gets up and washes his face and says, well, okay, this is the Lord's will. So, you know, it's worth a try, even if we know God is not going to listen. But God does listen, and God hears our prayers, and sometimes God works in ways that we don't understand. We'd like somebody to be healed of this disease and live another 5 years, but God has other ideas for them, and so we just have to go along with it. At the same time, we also see here that Jesus is not simply somebody who walks around with magical powers and, you know, heals people. He carries with him in his human body all the creative power that made the universe. So we tend to think of God the Father, as this powerful being, and Jesus is somewhat lesser. And I suppose in his human incarnation, he is somewhat lesser, but he's not really lesser. He's got all of all this power, and so he heals people, and he wants to see all of us healed, and eventually, by his death and resurrection, he heals all of creation, and we will all be healed. So hang on to that. We'll see you tomorrow.